A remote off-grid cabin, as far away from anybody as you can possibly get. I've been working on this one for 2.5 years because everything takes forever. But now it's finally to the point I can start wrapping things up and fix some existing problems like the porcupines and the mice in the roof. So come along with me as we dial things in, clean things up, and make this place livable once and for all. My name's Dave Whipple. You're watching Bush Radical. Now, most of the country looks like summer. Green grass, leaves on the trees. But here in the Lake Superior country, we're just coming out of a record winter. When I was here 2.5 months ago, there was 4 feet of snow on the level. And some of it is still here. With Memorial Day just around the corner, you would swear this is March, but it's not. Luckily, the cabin is just the way I left it last fall. It just needs a bit of cleaning and we'll be ready to get started. Now, I've made it a long ways on this cabin project over the last few years, but it's still basically a shell. It has a lot of projects that need to be done. Everything is kind of in a halfway state. And this trip, I'm going to take care of all that. Maybe it's not the best idea in the world, when you have so many things to do, to start by putting together a comfortable chair. But that's what I'm going to do today. That, and I need the box, believe it or not. The box is going to be one of the most important parts of this project because I have a ton of router work to do. And I'm going to need a big cardboard box to put underneath the router in order to not make a gigantic mess that I'll have to clean up later. Now, the plan for this trip is to flash the entire outside of the house to keep the porcupines from chewing up my siding. It's also to install a countertop and a sink and a propane cooktop on that counter. But first, let's test out this chair. I might not get nothing done now. Now, the first thing I'd like to knock out is routering the drawers and the door faces for my kitchen cabinets. This is something that's kind of been put off quite a while. And now that I have my sawdust collection system installed, I'm ready to get at it. Now, I think I've owned this router for 25 years. I bought it at a pawn shop for 20 bucks, and it has been on so many projects. You don't need much. You don't need any fancy tools. You just need a tool that'll do the job, and this little router is going to make these cabinets pop. Once I'm done putting a decorative edge on these drawers and cabinet faces, I'm going to knock off all the fuzzies with just a touch of sandpaper, which is kind of therapeutic. It takes very little effort and it makes a big difference. Look at that. Now, all these drawers and cabinet faces were made with just the cheapest 1x-dimensional lumber from the hardware store. Very inexpensive, but you end up with a real wood set of cabinets. No pressed fiberboard glue garbage. That's a pretty bit of router work right there. Kind of like the character, though. Now, the stain that I'm going to use for these drawers and door faces is Watco Danish Oil. It's my favorite because it's what I have. It also dries really quick, so out here in the sunshine and the breeze, I'll be able to put these things in just a little bit of time, maybe half an hour at the most. Now, Danish oil is probably basically just linseed oil with a few other goodies thrown in there. It's inexpensive, and a jug of it will last you forever. I've done the entire inside of a log house with 1.5 gallons of this stuff because it goes a long, long way. It looks good. It stinks, but, you know, there are trade-offs. One thing I love about Danish oil is it brings out the natural grain of the wood with very minimal coloring. Just kind of makes it look wet. I'll leave these out here in the sun for as long as it takes me to finish the kitchen cabinets themselves. By the time I'm done staining the cabinets, the drawers and doors, they should be dry enough that I can handle them and put them in. Now, the kitchen cabinets are just basically made with furring strips and plywood and some 2x4s. They're built in place. They're as solid as you could possibly hope for. Nothing fancy, but they're going to look good. I use only the finest tight bond glue, finish nails, and sheetrock screws to build these cabinets. Just like all the pros. Now, for anybody that's new to building, I would say one of the most important concepts you need to wrap your head around is sequence. Some things have to get done before other things can get done. This standing shelf is a good example. I need to get this shelf stained and sealed because it needs to go in its place before I put the baseboard trim on that back wall. So we'll get that stained and set in the sun to dry. And then we can work on our baseboard trim. This will also give the doors and drawers a little extra time to dry, so they're not going to be smudgy by the time I'm going to handle them. You can see that cardboard box is doing its job, catching all the chunks. When you work in one spot, generally, you end up with so much scrap and pieces and sawdust underneath your work area. And especially it being in front of the cabin, it just makes a gigantic mess. So this box is doing me a big favor. There you go. That shelf is dry enough I can put it in place. And now I can put the baseboard in, because it's going to butt right up against that shelf. And once the baseboard is in, the shelf's never going anywhere. There, that looks about right. One thing I've wanted to get done for so long is to get a couple carpets in here. It makes such a big difference. I bought these two at Walmart for $35 a piece. I still have one more to install. Lovely. Well, the stain on the drawers and doors is all dry, so it's time to put the hardware on. You know, shopping for hinges and drawer pulls is kind of a funny experience because there are so many expensive options, and they all do the same thing as the cheap ones. Hinges hinge, pulls pull. Now these are pretty cheap hinges, but they're going to work just fine. The only thing I need to keep in mind is that they all go in the same spot on each door, so that when you look at them, they all line up. You don't want one to be an inch from the top and then the next one 4 inches from the top. That's what tape measures are for. Makes finding the right spot easy. I cannot overstress how much I despise hardware store cabinets. Go to Lowe's and Menards, everything is pressed board and glue and sawdust. The only thing that's wood generally in any set of cabinets is the doors themselves. Everything else is just sawdust and Elmer's. And that's bad enough, but what really makes me angry is the fact that they charge astronomical amounts for garbage because it's already done. Buy a cabinet and put it in. Costs you 3 times as much to do it that way. When you can build one, it can be all real wood and cost you next to nothing. I don't think this whole set of cabinets cost me $100. And it's solid. Now that's what I like in a set of kitchen cabinets. They don't come with a big price tag, but they do come with satisfaction. Not the best, not perfect, but functional, durable, and they look good. Four days ago when I got here, I couldn't drive to this site because of the snow, but the temperature's reaching the mid-70s in the middle of the day, and everything's finally thawing out. 200 miles south, it's summer. Time to work on the countertops. I kind of have to dial these countertops in special to fit the space. Let me explain.
Now here's the deal with the countertop. Standard countertop is, I think it's 24 inches wide, but I made these cabinets small because the cabin is small. So I'm gonna have to cut this countertop down.
So what I'm going to do is cut the backsplash completely off to make this countertop fit the cabinets that actually exist. Removing the backsplash also might help this countertop to lay flat.
So on this countertop, I'm gonna drop in a 2-burner Amazon cook stove, and then I'm gonna drop in a single bowl sink. So I gotta cut a couple holes. I've got the corners marked. Lines are pretty hard to see, but they're there.
Now, after hearing my rant about how much I hate hardware store cabinets, I go out and buy a $60 countertop, which is the cheapest thing in the store. And the moisture in this country right now from all the snow melting really has this countertop bowed. The pressed board on the backside expands, but the Formica on the top doesn't go anywhere. So a countertop like this gets bowed in humid temperatures. It's going to make it a pain to fasten down. Now that I look at it, I feel a little like a hypocrite. I've got a real bias against cheap cabinets, but evidently no bias at all against cheap countertops. And even though it's a totally redneck way to go about things, I'm probably just going to screw this thing down with some sheetrock screws from above. Because really, there's no way I'm going to be able to make this countertop lay flat any other way. But we'll just cross that bridge when we come to it. Now, I bought this little propane cooktop off of Amazon. It cost me about $100, but I think it's going to be a very welcome addition to this little cabin. No need for a Coleman stove when you can just turn and burn. I just went to Ace Hardware and picked up the hose fittings to make it all work together. It cost maybe $150, everything included, other than the propane tank. And I'll just route this up through the floor and hook the stove up. But I do have to pass this hose up through the floor, and that means through all the insulation in the floor. So I want to make sure I don't get any insulation fibers inside this gas line, because I'm sure that's not good. Once that gas line is through the floor, I'll be able to make the connections on the back of the propane range top. But I don't really see a way to fasten the range top down into its hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use some clear caulk sealant and just glue it down. I will tell you this, when I bought the stove, it came with natural gas jets and a little wrench to change them out. And it also had the propane jets. They sit underneath the burner. So I had to install the propane jets. And now I'm just adjusting the low flame setting. And the kit came with a little tiny screwdriver to get in there and make that adjustment. So that's low, that's high. Now that I know the propane range top works good, it's time to put in the sink. But first, I'm going to screw down these countertops because they are super bowed. Now, like I said before, this is a super redneck way to do this, but I'm going to get some trim washers so that it looks at least decorative at some point. But you can see the bow in that countertop. It's got to be 2 inches high on both ends. That's just not going to work. Well, I think that sink install turned out pretty good. I'm going to just use a standard bucket underneath of it, so whatever wash water collects underneath the sink, you just dump it before you leave. Now it's time to take care of the rest of the baseboard and put the other chair in here. In a couple days it's supposed to rain, so as much as I do enjoy the chair sitting on the porch and sitting in the chair on the porch, I probably should get it inside. So I'll finish up my baseboard, install my other carpet, put my chair in, and then at that point, I think that's about it for the furnishings. But I think I'll tempt fate just a little longer and leave this chair on the porch. It's just too good out here. One project I've been meaning to knock out for a long time is to build a threshold for the door. I need to rehang this door at some point in its final location. But one thing that needs to be there first is a threshold. Right now it's just a plywood floor and then there's some random ends of the laminate flooring. So I cut a little channel in this 1x6 so it can fit over top of that laminate flooring. Then I'll take my electric planer and bevel an edge on it. There, I think that turned out just right. I'm not sure if I should seal this down, but I've got the caulk out anyway, so why not? Just set her in place, make sure it's not riding up on anything, so it's nice and flush with that laminate floor, and screw her on down. Beauty. Now at this point, I've been here at the cabin for about a week, and you can see I've got about 8 hours worth of work done. That's not saying much, but that's okay. Now we're expecting some pretty bad weather here in a couple days, so the outside jobs I'm going to have to rush and get done in the next couple days. So no more sitting in the chair on the porch. I'd like to get done with all my routering and staining work, which means I need to cut the trim for the top of the wall. At the top of the wall there's a gap where the tongue and groove ran out. That's what these little strips are going to go into. They're going to act as nailers and they're going to fill in that space. Man, my cardboard box is doing me wonders right now. I've probably got a ½ inch of junk in the bottom of it. So I'll finish doing my table saw work and I'll finish doing my routering work before it rains. Which, honestly, I don't know when that's coming, but I do hear on the radio that it is on the way. I just haven't paid attention to what they said as to when. Now with those nailers in place, I can put up my trim and I've got a nice solid backing to nail it off to. Perfect. This is something that's just been driving me insane for a long time. The time that I've been working here, I've been staying at the other cabin on the other side of the property. So I haven't run these lights in a long time. It's good to see that they still work. I did have to flip the switch back and forth a couple times before it decided it wanted to come on. But that little bit of lighting sure helps when you're working back in these corners, getting those last couple pieces on. I do have one last board I need to put in at the end of the loft. You could just see it there in the background a second ago. I just didn't have enough wood to finish the loft when I did the loft. I figured while I'm up here, I may as well trim out this last window up top. It's just one of those things that I kind of forgot to do. But once you got all your pieces cut and your expanding foam trimmed out, it's only about a 5-minute job. Not bad. Another project that needs to get knocked out before it rains is painting the backside of this cabin. Now I'm using a Cabot stain. This is called Fireside Cherry and it's evidently lethal because they quit making it and it's impossible to find. I looked all over the state at Ace Hardware stores and Lowe's trying to find the last couple gallons. And I did. I finally found 3 gallons of it and I bought it all. But man, I'll tell you what, it is a foul smelling concoction, that's for sure. It does produce a really good result. It looks really good and it seems to last quite well. But on the other hand, working in 75, 80 degree weather, staining with this highly fumous, noxious stain, I felt pretty rough by the time I was done with this back wall, and I was really happy that there wasn't any more to do. Not only that, but staining T111 siding, which is really rough, it takes absolutely forever. I probably spent an hour and 20 minutes just to do this back wall. But it does look good.
I came in here 9 days ago and I couldn't get to this site because of the snow. Snow went away. It's been 75 degrees every day and breezy and no clouds, and everything was crispy and dry. And then last night a storm came in and it was just lightning. And it was just barely raining. And man, I'm thinking like, it should rain a lot more than this, or otherwise the whole place is gonna be on fire. But this morning it's bright and blue. Everything's damp. Must have rained quite a bit more after I went back to bed. But unfortunately, all my tools are wet.
But at least I did get the important outside work done before the rain did hit. Now, one of the most important things I came up here to do was to mouse-proof the roof. So about 5 days ago, I trimmed up these trees so I could get around the back side of this building with scaffolding. It's amazing how much of a change there's been in just the time I've been here. The snow is almost completely gone. There's a little bit here and there in the woods, but the black flies are out, and it's probably 80 degrees today. And when I got here, you couldn't get to this cabin because of the snowbanks. Now, when I put the roof on, the metal of the roof, inside of every vent, I put a piece of wire mesh so the mice cannot climb up the wall and just go right through the little rib on the roof vent into the roof. What they've been doing is they've been climbing up the gable end and going right in the peak, in the gap between the two 2x4s at the top of the roof. So I'm going to put a nice piece of aluminum flashing at the very gable peak on both ends of the roof. That way the mice will never be able to climb to the peak of the roof again. Hence the scaffolding. Once I've got the flashing cut so it seats around those two 2x4s at the top, I'll just staple it off. This will act like an ice wall. When the mice try to climb up to the peak, they're going to get to this flashing and they're not going to be able to climb it. Not only that, but I'm going to wrap flashing around the two 2x4s at the top of the wall, sealing off that space in between. And I'm also going to put wire mesh in those rib vents. I'm going to overkill this thing to no end.
You know, one thing that absolutely never fails to impress me is how incredible mice are. Even though I hate their guts, I think they're completely licked on this one. You know, just a personal note, I do not own an extension ladder. Extension ladders are the devil. And I could be 15 feet in the air on scaffolding and walk around no problem. I get 3 feet off the ground on an extension ladder, man, I can't go. I won't do it. Let's put it that way. I'm not going to do it. Ain't going to happen.
Now, once your flashing is cut to the right size and fitted into place, it takes just a couple seconds to staple it off. But it's probably going to take me an hour and a half to set up and tear down and set up and tear down the scaffolding and do the little bit of work that actually needs to be done. But it does need to be done. Now, when I built this cabin and put wire mesh in every vent of the roof in the ribs, I figured I had them beat. But one day, about a year and a half back, I'm inside the cabin and I hear a mouse crawling around up in the roof. Oh, about lost my mind. But the peak of the gable is the last possible place a mouse can get in, and I'm pretty sure that's where it's been happening. And now, it ain't gonna happen again.
Put a chunk of mesh in those little holes up there, call it good.
I'd like to say that the mice are the only rodent problem this cabin has, but the bigger issue is porcupines. The porcupines seem to love T111 siding, and they have chewed it up. You can see next to the door there's just patches of siding that are missing because they've been eaten by porcupines, which is pretty common up here. But today I'm going to fix that problem too. I went to the Amish and I had them cut me some roof metal, 32 inches long, and I'm going to skirt the whole bottom of this cabin. That'll keep the porcupines from crawling up the corners, and it's also going to help keep them from eating the bottom of the cabin. They're going to have to get through this roof metal first, and that ain't going to happen. Now I'm going to cut this rib off so I got a flat area. And where it goes up next to the door, the trim will cover the joint. But I have to make sure that when I get to the corner, I'm in a spot where I can bend it. You know, one of these natural bends, and get it to go around the corner. Now I imagine that there is a right way to bend corners on roof metal, but I don't know what it is. So I've just decided to use just brute force. Just make it go where you want it to go. Not only do I need to make the bend, I need to cut this rib off on the end. I'm glad there's a first aid kit in the other cabin. This job just screams first aid. I better get smart before I get caught. Once I got around that first corner, everything went pretty fast. You can knock out 3 feet at a section. Making the bends was still the trickiest part. And then cutting off the ribs that you needed cut off without cutting your hand off. And moving everything out of the way and then moving it back over into the way. That took the most time. This job actually, I assumed, would take about an hour. And of course, like everything else, it took 3 times as long. All right. I think I can cut right here and the trim will cover. And if that gets me to the corner, put a bend right there. Black flies. Everywhere are black flies. There's got to be, I don't know, there's got to be 100 of them right here. I'm trying a new kind of bug dope. And actually, I'm not getting bit. I'm getting swarmed, but I'm not getting bit. 9 days ago, it was like it was winter here. Now it's 80 degrees and the black flies are out like crazy. But as I got closer and closer to the end of this job, the temperature just kept dropping and dropping and dropping. It's been like 80 degrees the last couple days, probably the last 4 days. And all of a sudden it's 50 and dark. Well, I finally made it around the corner and I only have just a little bit of metal left to go. But at the very end, I did end up with a little height discrepancy. So there's where we ended up. This side is a fuzz higher. Probably should have popped chalk lines and set everything to a chalk line. I don't think I got a chalk line with. I probably do, actually. It was going to be an excuse, but I think I got one. I'll do what any good carpenter does. I will hide it with some fancy trim. Looks good to me. I got to put a chunk of trim along the top, but I may do that tomorrow. I think it's kind of going to get rainy on me. With the mouse flashing up in the peak of the roof and all the porcupine flashing done around the sides, I think I've got all the outside work done. And none too soon, because 30 minutes later, it finally decided to rain again. But the rain and the cold weather give me a great opportunity to put a nice hot fire in this stove and warm the cabin up and get rid of all the trash that's in here.
Start this fire like the old timers did, with some garbage. Not only does that heat feel good, but it just feels good to get rid of this stuff. Now it's time to put up some decor, like a manly cabin decor. Boy, in no time at all, that wood stove has made this cabin almost too warm.
There, decor. But right now it's pouring rain outside, but it has been so bone dry other than that one little thunderstorm that came through. As soon as the rain stops, I'm going to get outside and clean up the yard, which means pole sawing all these trees off and burning a ton of brush. But for right now, I'm just going to enjoy the heat and look at my beautiful decor. After about 45 minutes, the rain died down enough I could get back outside and get a good fire going. Now everything is soaking wet, but once I get a fire ripping, I'll be able to burn whatever I need to. All of these trees are completely full of branches, and I'd like to get this area dialed in so it's at least nice to be out here. I'd like to put a nice fire pit in, maybe even a picnic table at some point, and this could be a park-like setting. It just needs a whole lot of work. I've been waiting almost 2 weeks for a night like this when it's been good and wet, because this country has just been too dry to have a big fire. And there's so much here I need to burn. Didn't dare do it till now. Well, it turns out I ended up with about an hour of good burning weather until it started to pour again.
Yeah, I'm already soaked. I don't need any more. I'm good. Good thing that it's nice and warm in here still.
The next morning, with the cabin finally cleaned out, both rugs, both chairs in, I decided it was time to try out that propane cooktop and cook a proper breakfast on it. Or at least the best I can do with what I've got, which is 3-year-old pancake mix and the cheapest syrup available. But hey, I've got good butter. When I got here almost 2 weeks ago, there was all the refrigeration you could want. Big drifts of snow in the woods everywhere you looked, and I could keep all kinds of food cold, so I had sausage and different things that needed refrigeration. And now about all I've got left is well water and 3-year-old pancake mix. But that's okay. That's a well-deserved pancake, in my opinion. Look at that gorgeous mouse-proof flashing. Man, that is a thing of beauty.
Look who we got that don't appreciate it. Oh, you can't get in the roof. Well, son of a gun. That's just too bad. That's just too bad. You can't get in there. Oh my goodness. I know it's warm and toasty, and you're all set up, but it's too bad, homie.
Can't even get down now either because of the slippery metal. Don't go down one of those holes. You won't ever get out. Don't do it. Oh man, that's the whole reason I was here. Mice in this area are absolutely terrible. There's another one in my box of saw blades.
on, get out of there, buddy. Go.
Well, after breakfast, I decided to have another breakfast and eat my last 2 eggs. I'm about ready to pack up and head out of here, so better not waste them. I don't have a wastebasket here or a trash bag, so anything that's burnable goes in the stove. Maybe those eggshells might take a while, but they'll burn up too. And while I was cooking breakfast, I was burning my last little fire outside because I had a few things I needed to get rid of, including my handy sawdust catching box. This thing has actually done me quite a few favors, kept my yard nice and clean. Over the last few days, I've been packing up little by little, so that when I was ready to go, I'd be ready to go. But I've managed to take the cabin from this to this. And from this to this. Sure has been a productive 2 weeks, even though I haven't been that productive personally myself. I've managed to get most of it done.
Oh, that's a vast improvement. Got to keep the porcupines out, keep the mice out of the roof. I think I got both of those things taken care of. I thought I'd be farther along, to be honest. I get up here and I spend a lot of time sitting on the porch staring into the woods. And I also spend a lot of time reading. And, you know, you think you can get 10 things done in a day and you find you get 2 done. But that's okay. We're not too far off from the day when I can come up here and not touch anything but my boat and my fishing rod. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. My name's Dave Whipple, and you've been watching Bush Radical. And be radical, eh? See you soon.